Hey YouTube, we're back. It's time. We went through our content, and lo and behold, our most popular videos that we have are, why would you want to shoot an 80-pound bow? Well, so now we're gonna have a battle of the 80-pound bows. As soon as our seasons ended, Josh and I dove back into the shop and we started working on our setups for next year. And lo and behold, we started working on 80-pound setups. So we decided to throw together some footage and see if we could put a video out of a comparison of the 80-pound setups that we've been shooting and preparing for our next elk hunt. So why would you want to shoot an 80-pound bow? Josh is going to explain the benefits that you gain from shooting an 80-pound bow. So let's hear it.
Thanks, Ken. I'd be happy to explain some of the benefits to shooting an 80-pound bow. First of all, I shoot an 80-pound bow because I can. It's something that I physically can do. I can pull the draw weight without any trouble. And we're finding with some of these new cam systems that various bow companies are putting together, it is actually easier than it has ever been to pull back an 80-pound bow and shoot accurately. So that's definitely a benefit over what it used to be. One of the biggest reasons that I see, or biggest benefits that I see to shooting an 80-pound bow, is I can shoot a projectile that can give me more confidence in being able to penetrate. Now, there's a lot of discussion and a lot of controversy about shooting heavy arrows, high FOC. I'm not really going to get into any of that right now, but the physics involved with shooting a heavier arrow is hard to argue with. So, and one of the drawbacks that people have argued against shooting a heavier arrow is arrow speeds. So naturally increasing your poundage, you're going to gain speeds. And I could shoot a 540 grain arrow in the 290 feet per second range with some of these 80-pound bows these days. And if you want to run the numbers, if you're a number cruncher, the kinetic energy and momentum, whichever one you feel is more important, is significantly increased with a heavier arrow traveling at those speeds. And the reason for that comes down to being an ethical hunter. And I'm not saying people that don't shoot heavy arrows or an 80-pound bow are not ethical. Number one, Kenneth and I firmly believe that shot placement, technique, and form are all very important to being an ethical hunter. So above anything else, before going into shooting heavier arrows, heavier poundage, you should be working first and foremost on shot placement. And that's the argument, or the comeback I hear a lot about why are you shooting a heavier arrow? Are you trying to make up for poor shot placement? Or 80-pound bow, guys that shoot 80-pound bows are trying to make up for poor shot placement. And the reality is, I mean, besides that being kind of offensive to me as an archer, the reality is, once you draw back on an animal and you let the arrow fly, there are so many variables that you cannot control. And if that animal was to jump the arrow, now I don't believe jumping the string, I think they hear the arrow more than they hear the string. That's my opinion. You can argue with that all you want. I don't really care. Either way, they hear things. They have very acute hearing. They are trying to stay alive. So and we're in their environment. So they have adapted to staying alive. And we can't control so many things when we're out there in the woods. So even if you have an exceptional shot placement, that animal may not be static, and it may be static when you let the arrow fly, but things happen. We all see the videos. So I want to make sure that I'm shooting an arrow that once it comes into contact with that animal, whether that animal is static from the time I let the arrow fly to the time it hits, or if it moves, or if there's a branch or a limb or something that I didn't account for, that the odds of me actually making a lethal hit are increased. That's what it comes down to. You can argue with any of that all you want, but it comes down to the plan B arrow. And for lack of better terms, that's the best way to describe it. I want to control everything that I can, and all of those things I can control. I can control what arrow I shoot, I control how heavy it is, I control how fast it goes, and I want to make sure that the things that I can't control are going to have a less effect on whether or not I'm able to make an ethical kill. And that's really what it comes down to.
All right, thanks, Josh. Another thing that I wanted to say is kind of a disclaimer. We kind of filmed and refilmed and edited this several different times to try to make sure that it was easy to watch, fun to watch, and informative. So you're not going to see us shoot these arrows through the chronograph. I'm going to put in picture-in-picture inlays of the results as we shoot these bows and we talk about them. What I want to say about that is we're not sponsored by any of the companies that we shoot. We shoot Hoyt, PSE, Matthews, and none of these companies have paid us anything to say anything about these bows. So the numbers that you're going to see in there, we have no reason to fudge them, to make them higher, make them slower, and we actually have no reason to talk bad about one or good about the other. So the things that you hear us say, they're purely our opinion. If you disagree, that's great. Leave a comment, leave a question. If you've got questions, please let us know. All right, so here it goes.
Okay, this is the Halon, the Halon 32.5 that put switch weight cams on it. Overall weight comes in at 7.1 pounds. That is with the Spot Hog and the AAE Mountain Series stabilizers. So that's a manageable weight with a few accessories, minus the quiver and arrows. And the draw cycle is actually very smooth, doesn't really hump anywhere. Just stays nice and loaded all the way through. The hold is pretty steady with this bow. It doesn't want to tip or dive or duck. It feels nice and solid when I pull it back and anchor in. Try not to bust up my arrows here. So the hold is nice. So as I'm tuning this bow, it's just like any other Matthews with the top hats. It tuned up easily. It is a little temperamental with the grip pressures. I will say that. I did notice that shooting through paper. So I feel like it might be a little bit harder to shoot, and that's probably due to the 5-inch brace height. I think with some practice, you should be able to make it work. My plan is to keep shooting this bow, and then we might do another review on it and see where we're at. So tunability, it is tunable. Shootability is probably a maybe. I do feel some hand shock. Obviously this platform wasn't designed for what I've got on here for cams and draw weight. But we're gonna go ahead and, we like to custom build things. We're always messing with stuff, trying to make things better. We'll see if this turns out to be better.
With the first bow. First bow I'll be shooting here is the RX1 at 80 pounds. Now, I just went through and pulled these back with the Last Chance archery bow scale, and this one is pulling at 85.7 pounds. I also weighed each bow with its current setup. Now you're gonna get different variations of how much this bow can weigh, but right as it's set up now with the stabilizers that I have, it's 7.0 pounds. So right at 7 pounds. And like I said, your mileage will vary, your weights will vary with different bow setups, but that's what this one is set up right at now. Now the draw length on this one is at 29.5 inches. And like I said, I'll roll in the footage of the chrono still shots. All right, so a few shots with this bow. I'm going to talk about some of its characteristics. Like I said, this bow is probably the heaviest pull that I have, and you notice it. It's like I said, it's 85 pounds that you're pulling back. It is what is it? What do you think? It's like 18 degrees here. It's 20 something degrees. But it's a nice, not a lot of hand shock on the shot. The way that I've got it set up here. Like I said before, the pull is pretty stout, but it's not unmanageable as far as an 80-pound pull. It holds pretty steady, and I enjoy shooting this bow. I like the characteristics of the back wall with the Hoyt, and people will tell you, like Josh mentions in his video, the Hoyt back wall is a little bit of has a little bit of sponge in it, a little bit of give, so that if you're shooting a true back tension release, you can actually execute it fairly well. It helps quite a bit in the variability of some releases, and maybe some release companies won't like me saying that, but it's a nice back wall. I enjoy it. I like it better than a limb stop, to tell you the truth. On nice calm days, this bow holds super steady. I really like the Hoyt grip that they went to with the RX series, the Red Works. I find that grip to be probably the most repeatable out of all the bows that I've shot. So the draw cycle on this bow, it starts off really stiff, then drops off right until there's a little teeny hump right before you drop into the valley. So stiff, there's a hump just barely into the valley. But not bad. I really do. I like that draw cycle. It's nice. What else?
Okay, now we have Blackfive. Blackfive is coming in with the sight and stabilizers at 6.9 pounds. Relatively light base setup, considering that we have the extra wheels and things, they've done a good job of keeping this thing as light for an aluminum riser. So onto the draw cycle. The draw cycle on Prime has been one of the things I like about them. Steady all the way through. It might load up near the end, but not a whole lot. It's got the cable stops standard on it this year. It's still a very solid back wall. I found it difficult to shoot a resistance style release with it. That's why you see me shooting the thumb button style. Seems to be a little bit easier to shoot that way with the firm back wall. Hold. Prime Prime has a very stable platform that they built with the Synergy grip in the riser, grip in the center of the riser. Makes it very stable. It holds very nice. It doesn't want to move. Once you acquire the grip, it stays nice and steady. A little bit of a jump at the shot for an 80-pound bow. You might expect that. Very little vibration. You might be picking up just a little bit there. Tunability. This is where I struggle with Prime. This year they do have the shims or spacers on their cams that you can move around a little bit. It comes with two different sizes, so you can move the cam a little bit one way or the other. Similar to a top hat system. Still a little challenging to tune this thing. Tried to keep it as close as I can to center shot, but it's a little off center shot. One of the things that if you're gonna shoot a Prime, in my opinion, you need to be willing to move it off center shot and not be married to that, which is okay for some people it's not. And I feel like as I was tuning it, the grip pressures, once I figured out that it needed this stiffer spined arrow, things got a little bit better tuning it. This bow, out of all of them, for whatever reason in the power stroke, it needs that extra spine. So I'm shooting a 200 spine arrow with it. The grip is a little temperamental. Of all the grips, I think I like the Hoyt the best for sure. And then the PSE's coming in. It's a little square on the grip, but it's narrow enough that it works. It gives you the feedback you need. The Prime grip, it's a little too rounded for me. It's comfortable, and I actually do like shooting off the riser, but it's a little too rounded. I like the sharper edges, a little bit sharper edges, just to get that feedback. You get a little bit better feedback for pressure, in my opinion. That's my opinion. So, shootability. I think this bow is very shootable. Very pleasant to shoot. Nice brace height. String angle is good. The 35 axle to axle, even though, now one of the interesting things about Prime is, since they have the grip in the center of the riser, your arrow is high. So they've counteracted that by making this cam is slightly bigger than this cam. And when you draw back, you actually have a more steep angle on the top than you do on the bottom, if that makes sense. So you're closer to the top axle with your arrow. And so naturally that's going to be a little steeper. So this string angle is probably more comparable to a 33 or 34 axle to axle as far as the string angle is concerned, but it's still a good comfortable string angle. Anyways, got to get more string time behind this thing.
So next up is the Hoyt RX3 Ultra. This was one of the big contenders for heading out into the elk woods. So weighed it just a few minutes ago with the Last Chance our archery scale. It weighs 7 pounds in its current configuration. I didn't imagine that would be that much different than the RX1. So yeah, pretty much about the same weight. The pull on this one is 82.2 pounds. So yeah, right in there with everything else. This bow is not much different than the RX1 as far as the characteristics of the pull. However, being the Ultra, it's got a little bit more axle to axle length. So it seems to be a little bit more forgiving than the RX1, being it's at the longer axle to axle. Draw cycle's pretty much the same. Holds nice and steady. Pretty good back wall. I want to say that the back wall on the RX3 is a little bit better than the RX1 as far as being a little bit stiffer, but still has that little bit of give that come to appreciate from Hoyt. Another thing that I'll say about this one as far as shootability, it seems to catch as far as the bigger bow, if it's breezy or windy, it seems to catch the wind a little bit more than the RX1. Obviously, probably the bigger surface area does that. So in windier conditions, maybe a little bit harder to stay on target. But nice. Like I said, this was a big contender for heading out into the elk woods. So RX3, yeah, it was a hard decision. We'll see what I decide to do. I might come back to shooting this a little bit more. We'll see. I shoot a lot of these bows. I love the grip on the Hoyts though. I'll have to say this pull is obviously a lot better than the RX1 too. It's probably one of the easier pulls out of the 80 pound setups. Ooh, I'm gonna break some arrows here too.